everyone, my name's Stonesy Boy, and welcome back to Reading with Stonesy. Today we're doing a short reading just so we can get back and caught up with the 20 pages a chapter, with last time being really long and this time being really short. You know, they kind of counteract, and I could have combined them, but then the story would have been weird. Anyways, today we are starting the reading of The Man from Room 1280, which is, actually a story I don't really remember much on, but if it's as good as the others, then this one should be decent. So anyways, let's start with this chapter of The Man in Room 1280. Standing at the smudged window in room 1280, the nurses deliberately kept their backs to the patient and watched the priest approach the hospital. They all breathed as shallowly as they could, trying to ignore the sensation of being observed and judged. "He has to be warned," one of the nurses said. "He won't believe us," the second one said. The head nurse's face was hard as stone. "Then he'll find out the hard way." Arthur pedaled his vintage bicycle, Ruby, through the stone archway at the base of the drive leading up to Hercules Hospital. The archway, like much of the hospital itself, was engulfed in thick green ivy. The bicycle's antique balloon tires chopped at the moist pavement, spitting fallen leaves in their wake. A black SUV passed Arthur, and a little boy in the back seat turned in to stare, watching Arthur until the SUV rounded the drive's curve of the calmed entrance in the imposing medical center. Arthur knew that he and Ruby made a striking picture. Arthur didn't have to wear a long, flowing back crossback flooded out behind Ruby, but he liked wearing it. It buoyed him, made him feel like he was lifted by angels' wings. Or maybe he just didn't thought it looked good, in which case he needed to do better in his first deadly sin. Ruby was evidence of that as well. The priest didn't need the fully restored 1953 bicycle with gleaming chrome fenders and a shiny red paint, but a priest would enjoy what he had, couldn't he? Ruby was a gift from a dying man. How could Arthur refuse to accept her? Arthur smiled to himself. The truth was neither nor Ruby's appearance interested him much. He really was just a meek man who allowed himself a couple of indulgent flares because they made him happy. A few drops of rain hit Arthur's face, making him regret leaving his Saturnal hat, size large enough to fit over his red bicycle helmet, at home. "It's going to rain, Arthur housekeeper," Peggy had warned him. "The sun loiters behind every cloud, Peggy," he told her. "It just needs a little faith to coax it out." Peggy had laughed at him, as she often did. Arthur glanced up at the rolling steel gray sky. Layered behind the gray were inky wisps of cirrus clouds that curled like beckoning fingers. Arthur put a hand down and pedaled faster. Just another couple hundred feet, and he'd be under the hospital's portico, sheltered beneath the dubious protection of the stone Cerberus statue that hunched atop of the columns in the hospital's entrance. Hercules Hospital was one of the more imposing hospitals of which Arthur had been called. The structure had been built centuries before using rough-hewn stone, painstakingly extracted from the local quarry at the cost of a countless man's life, and it held generations of pain, struggle, and sorrow within its walls. But Arthur knew it was also held hope and love and joy. That was always what he chose to see. Then he looked up at the road. Arthur's gaze was drawn to the sky above the hospital. He smiled. One of the streaming golden rays of sunshine touched the backside of the red tile roof, peering through the blackness and slicing through the gray clouds pressing down on the building. "See, Ruby," Arthur said. "Like I said, it just needs a little faith." Ruby didn't respond, but Arthur had to laugh at himself when he just pulled up on his bike right under the portico. Rain began to fall in heavy drops. They splattered on the pavement, filled with air of sweet ozone smell. "Well, rain is good too," he said, and flipped up the hem of his cassock and got off Ruby's cushy leather seat. "Excuse me, Father, were you talking to me?" someone said. Arthur turned around to find a young woman in the rain slicker, her blonde hair pulled into a top ponytail, juggling a pink backpack and an orange tote bag and a red umbrella. She had a square face and a wide mouth that were squared from looking masculine by her lively blue eyes and the bright makeup she wore. She smiled at Arthur attentively. "Hello, young lady," Arthur said. He gave her a half bow. Arthur had turned just 47 the previous spring, but he looked older because his hair had turned mostly gray a decade before, and deep emotions had carved lines on his face. Recently, he decided he was now old enough to refer a young woman as young lady, when he was a young man himself. He was always befuddled by what we call women. Miss and ma'am seemed to offend more than often than not, for a reason that confused Arthur. "Hey, you," that was always inappropriate. "Hi," the young woman said. Arthur held out a hand. "I'm Father Blythe." Inwardly, he cringed at the formality. He preferred being called by his first name,
but his bishop had made it abundantly clear that only so many of Arthur's indiscrepancies would be tolerated. "I'm Maya," the young woman said. He took Arthur's hand. Maya's hand was small, soft, and very, very cold. Arthur held it slightly longer than he would have, willing some of his warmth into the chill of her fingertips. "Mia for Mia said as Arthur released her hand. "I'm a nurse here. Or I'm going to be. Or, I mean, I am. Well, as of 15 minutes from now I am, I guess. Or I am because I was already hired?" Maya's voice was mellow and sweet and filled with endearing uncertainty. Arthur smiled. "Congratulations," he said. He looked at Maya more closely and saw that the dark blue nurse's uniform was hiding under a yellow rain slicker. Thanks." Maya looked at the hospital's entrance and frowned. Her lower lip quivered for just a second. Arthur pulled a bicycle chain and locked the satchel before she slung across his body. He bent over the secure ruby. It was all his faith, but prudence had place in the world too. A car pulled in under the patio and let out a large woman barking orders at the smaller woman, who followed her into the hospital. An older couple walked slowly toward the entrance, hand in hand. A janitor sat on a nearby bench, staring at his feet. Two fat pigeons hopped along the walkway, pecking at invisible morsels. The rain was coming down harder now. It thrummed on the pavement and hissed under the trees of the passing cars. A metallic trickling sound came from the downspouts at the bottom edge of the hospital's columns. Arthur straightened and realized Maya was still standing next to him. He stared at the hospital entrance. "Are you okay, Myra?" Arthur asked. Maya blinked. "What, me? Sure. I mean, I will be. I hope. Yes. Well, I'm better than I was. She stopped and turned. "Why is the dog that guards Hades up here?" She pointed at Portico's ceiling. Arthur frowned. He wasn't sure of that himself. It's Greek mythology. Cerberus was tasked in preventing the dead from leaving the underworld. Arthur didn't know whether the Cerberus statue was meant to suggest it was going to keep the dead from entering the hospital, or whether it's going to keep keep the people who died in the hospital from moving on. The symbolism was made even murkier by the hospital's names. Hercules, the son of Zeus and Alcmene, as a mythological hero. One of his 12 laborers was capturing Cerberus. The hospital's name and statue left Arthur wondering if this was a place of good or evil. Either way, he had a job to do. "I'm not actually sure," Arthur said, "but it's just a statue." Maya didn't seem convinced. Arthur glanced at the plain black banded watch. "Shall we?" He indicated to the hospital's automatic sliding doors, which had switched open and closed at least a dozen times since Arthur had locked up Ruby. Maya lifted her chin. Yes, I guess I have to." She glanced at her own watch. "I made sure to get here early, and I'm not going to be late if I don't go in now." Arthur took a step, but Maya didn't. Arthur stopped. He wanted to get on why he was here, but Maya didn't seem to need help, and helping was what Arthur did. "Do I perceive a hesitation?" Arthur asked. Maya sighed. "This job wasn't my first choice. I wanted a position at Glendale, you know?" Arthur nodded. He visited Glendale Hospital often, and he had to admit he preferred it as well. He only visited Hercules one time so far, just the previous week, and he already knew it wasn't going to be his favorite place. But Arthur wouldn't be choosy. He was called. Hercules was actually far more modern than Glendale, Arthur offered as encouragement. 10 years before, Hercules had been bought by a millionaire who practically gutted the hospital before renovating it into the state-of-the-art medical center. The renovation made sure to keep all the original exterior architectural details, and even the hospital's interior was designed to reminiscent of an older era, with crisp white walls, black and white tiled floor, thick baseboard, and a crown molding. The result of the sort of time whiplash where cutting-edge technology shared space with crystal chandeliers and wrought iron skullwork. "I know," Maya said, "but..." She sighed again. "I guess it's better than a prison hospital. That's where I was before." Arthur was surprised. "Really? I never saw you there. You got out of the prison?" "I go there when I'm needed," Arthur said. A siren screamed, squawked, then burbled into a abrupt silence as the ambulance knocked up to a stop in front of the hospital's emergency entrance, 50 feet from where Arthur and Maya stood. "Shall we go inside?" Arthur suggested. He put his hand lightly on Maya's upper back in an attempt to propel her forward. It didn't work. Maya grabbed his sleeve of Arthur's cassock. "What do you mean? You go where you're needed." Arthur stepped back to avoid two teenage girls carrying a bouquet of balloons that looked big enough to pick him up and carry him away. He mentioned for Maya to join them next to the cluster of panicle hydrias, the plant's large white cylinder flowers hanging from them violently even though the early fall chill pressed upon him. Once tucked out of the way, Arthur faced Maya. "I give the dying their last rites." Maya shivered. "But you seem so cheerful, so kind. How could you see that way around the dead?" Arthur smiled. "Death isn't a sad thing, it's a transition. I'm kind of like a tour guide for people making a transition. Or maybe like a traveling companion. Instead of letting fear take people away, I step in and take fear's place. Once fear is gone, the soul can reach the other side in peace." Maya gazed into Arthur's eyes, and he wondered what he saw there. He perceived his eyes to be boring, brown eyes of a simple man, but what did others see? Arthur waited. Sure, he still needed to be more than he needed to be hospice wing, and he summoned him, at least for another moment. Finally, Maya took a deep breath and nodded. I'm glad I met you, Father. Me too, Maya. She held up her arm, elbow out. Well, will you escort me to my first day of the job then? I've been assigned to the hospice wing, and I bet that's where you're going. Arthur smiled, looked at his arm, took Mia's arm. Indeed I am, Mia. Let's go. At the curved desk of the nurse's station in the hospice wing, Arthur passed Mia up to the tall, sharp-edged woman, with too many teeth and dark-eyed gaze, that unsettled Arthur. Nurse Ackerman was the head of the hospice wing, and Arthur had met her last week when he came to introduce himself. He admonished himself for disliking her immediately, although, to be fair, he doubted many human beings did like her.
And that's the end of that. Well, that's alright. Because next time, when we are back together, we are reading 141 to 160. Let me just... 141 to 160. So it shouldn't be that bad. Anyways, I hope you guys have a super fantastic... sorry. Hope you guys have a super fantastic, wonderful day. People like you, fishing. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm sorry about the dogs. I'm going to kill them later. Bye-bye.